Professor Joseph Drew. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why it's important for us to be better at budgeting. And indeed, it goes over a lot of the material I went through at the Local Government Professionals Conference in New South Wales, which was an absolutely awesome event. So please hang on and you'll find out why it's important and how to do better. And in this regard, some recent research that I did with my colleagues, Professor Noguchi in TMU Japan and Dr. McQueston, shows us the absolute importance of getting these budgets right. We went back in a panel of 9 years of data for New South Wales, and the same thing would have occurred in any state. And we had a look at the effect of budget accuracy on efficiency. And what we found is that for every 1% your budget is out, your efficiency goes down by 0.6%. That's an absolutely massive response rate, and that's why we've got to do better. So please stay hanging on. The causes of error we actually went through in the paper that's been recently published, and there was three main causes of error. The first one was unpredictable and chaotic regulatory decisions. Decisions like the financial assistance grants allocations. They're being done contrary to the federal legislation. They're being used to bail out local governments which have gone broke. They're being used for purposes other than stipulated in the Commonwealth legislation and for purposes other than what the Commonwealth government gave the money for. They're very unpredictable. They're chaotic. You couldn't possibly defend the FAG allocations. But also other regulatory decisions like the 0.7% rate cap increase in New South Wales. It's slightly higher in Victoria, it's 1.something%. But obviously you can't plan for bizarre decisions like that in a high inflationary environment. Who would ever have thought in their budget that someone would come up with a 1.something% increase to taxation revenue? So that's a problem, and you can't do much about it. The next set of problems are unpredictable decisions by agencies, such as when local governments subcontract to do road work. It's quite a common practice. Because local governments aren't getting given enough notice to plan, it tends to result in them having to move fast, make quick decisions, and that tends to result in inefficiency. So if these agencies could understand that their decisions, their work programs have budget implications and efficiency implications for local governments, then perhaps they could tell local governments quicker and give them more warning about upcoming work so that local governments can do a better job. And the last set of errors are actually something you can do something about. So typically in most states, you only need to investigate and report on budget errors of 10%. Now, as I said at the beginning, a 1% budget error is a 0.6% decrease in efficiency. A 10% budget error is a 6% decrease in efficiency. A lot of councils just can't cope with that. So obviously we need to be looking at much lower errors. I would suggest at the minimum, if you're 5% out, you need to be looking at it. You need to be finding out the reasons why, recording the reasons why very, very clearly and in great detail, probably in more detail than you can do in a financial statement, and keeping a record of that so the institutional knowledge builds up over time, so when people are doing the next budget, they can look and go, what's gone wrong previously? Oh, that happens when you do this, so we won't do that, or we'll adjust this figure. If you don't keep those records, people can't make those sorts of adjustments and decisions, better decision making. But personally, I think any error, 3% or more, you really want to be spending some time on it, because the response in efficiency is so large. My advice, and the question that was asked at the conference is, well, what can you do? Well, what you can do is control the things you can control. You can control what rate your debt is at. Now, I was talking to someone from the Commonwealth Bank, and I'm not publicising or promoting the Commonwealth Bank. There's lots of banks that offer finance, and there's often opportunities through your treasury corporations. But they were telling me they will fix a loan for 30 years. So there's an opportunity for you to fix your debt for a lengthy period of time, perhaps as long as the asset's life is, to get the intergenerational equity imputed into the loan terms, and to also make sure you don't have this rate risk. You know, if you've got a short fixed loan of 5 years, what that means is in 5 years' time, you've got a huge risk that your cost of debt is going to increase substantially. If you have a longer fixed loan, you've got less risk. You're controlling the things you can control. What else can you control? You can control staff numbers. And if your CFOs and GMs and councillors don't know precisely what your FTE number is and don't know why it's changing up if it's going up, they need to know these things. It's very, very important. You need to keep an eye on the FTE. Okay, you can't do much about enterprise bargaining agreements usually. You can't do much about sick leaves and accidents and things like this, although you can do your best to minimize harm. But you can control the thing that drives all those other expenses, and that's your FTE. So control what you can. Don't become a victim of learned helplessness and go, it's all out of our hands. Well, a lot of it is, but control the things that you can. And be a pessimist. This is a picture of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. He was also a Stoic philosopher. And basically, I'm paraphrasing it badly, but basically his philosophy is plan for the worst case scenario. And you know what? If it doesn't come about, you're going to be happy. If it does come about, you're going to cope. I don't think local governments are planning for the worst case scenario, particularly in terms of these long-term financial plans. And that's important. Look at the inflation. It just keeps rising and rising and rising. Look at the producer price indexes, not the CPI of different countries. Look at when they came in and out of lockdowns and the fact that we're behind them. And you can see where we're going to go in the future. Have one eye towards the future and be quite pessimistic about the future. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen if you're overly pessimistic? Worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to find yourself in your local government with additional funds, surplus funds. You're going to find yourself more financially sustainable than what you would be otherwise. But what's the alternative if you're too optimistic? You may find yourself without a local government entirely, which is what's happened twice already in Australia. And use your budget, not just your annual budget, but particularly these long-term financial plans, use them as the central piece of any decision making. Every time your councillors go into a meeting, have the long-term financial plan and the budget there. And when they propose things, or there are changes, get in the habit of going back to the budget and back to the long-term financial plan before you discuss anything else. Make the budget and the long-term financial plan central to everything you do. And you've got far more chance of keeping to the budget, far more chance, therefore, of being more efficient. And keep your budget and your long-term financial plans up to date. I know we have to do quarterly budget reviews, but why can't it be a weekly process? I know everyone's busy, but it's such a key document. If we don't get this right, the councillors don't have the information about the state of financial affairs. The public don't have the information. The state government don't have the information. And if something suddenly happens, like in New South Wales, someone had a thought bubble, they'll give you a month to increase your rates by more than the ridiculously low rate peg. If you don't have your long-term financial plans up to date and your budget's up to date, how are you supposed to respond within that month? So there should be a key lesson that came out of what happened in New South Wales, and it's a lesson for the other states too. Keep your long-term financial plan up to date all the time. When you're going for special rate variations, or when you're engaging with the community in any way, shape or form, that budget, that long-term financial plan had to have been up to date. It had to be the pessimistic case, because if it's not those things, it's not unreasonable for people not to really understand the situation. You need to give them the information, and you give them this information in these key documents, which you need to make central to everything you do in your local government. So look, I hope that was helpful to you. If you've got some more questions, throw them in the comments, and I'm making a video every couple videos a week, and I'll respond to your question as quickly as I can. Do me a favor, disseminate these videos. Tell other people about the channel. Subscribe. Help me to help others. That's all we're trying to do. So thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.